Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. This is Thursday, May the 16th, and we're live in a storm in Lubbock. So we got some rain going on out there, and you know how it goes around here. When it rains, sometimes it knocks my power out to the building. So if I lose you, I'll try to get you back as soon as I possibly can. And if it knocks me out for the night, then we'll just call it a night and go on with it. But right now we're live and we're going, and we're glad to be here, and I hope you guys had a great day. I hope everybody out there in the radio land at 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation is doing good. Hope you guys on Facebook, on YouTube, and on X. Y'all, I hope all you guys out there. I've noticed we've gotten some more listeners on X lately, and some more subscribers to YouTube. So welcome to the show. If you want to go back and watch any of the old episodes, they're all on there on Facebook and on YouTube and on X, and you can go back and check out any of those shows. And it goes back to September, so we've been at it now for a little while. And you know, doing a show like this is really interesting because you try to make it interesting, you try to make it relevant, you try to make it interesting, you try to keep the topics going, and there's so many things you can talk about, but if you're not careful, you end up talking about stuff that gets way away from the foundational principles of what really health is all about. And health is just not that complicated. It's really not. We make it into like one of my girls today, she's so funny. I love her to death, but she was talking about how her knees were sore and her shoulders were sore and like all this stuff. And I'm like, have you done your tractioning? And she's like, no. And I was like, are you eating sugar? And she said, yes. And I said, are you getting your exercise in? Are you drinking your Dr. Peppers? You know, and it was like, no, yes. And then she just started laughing, you know, and it was like, well, it's probably none of that. It's probably the moon's out of alignment or something, you know, or it's probably some exotic berry from South America that you're not eating, or it's probably some supplement that you're not taking or something. And so we make it harder than it needs to be. We make health harder than it needs to be. And the more I do the show and the longer we do the show, the more I just don't want to get out there just to be entertaining, which I don't think I'm entertaining at all, but I am here. So you got to give me that much. But I just don't want to I don't want to make something out of nothing when it comes to health. It's not that complicated. Every single person on the planet can be healthy. You don't have to be rich to be healthy. You don't have to be American to be healthy. You don't have to be. Yeah. Thank you, JT. He liked that exotic berry comment. But yeah, look up Mona V. Look up Mona V. Mona V. I don't even know what it's called. Multi-level marketing company. Acai berry looks like wine in a wine bottle. The acai berry. Y'all ever heard of that? Acai berry. It's so sexy, right? It just sounds sexy the way you say it. It's like, whoo, man, that must be really healthy for me. And then you say blueberry, and blueberry doesn't sound very dang healthy. It's just not very sexy, right? But man, if we have an acai bowl, we'll eat the dog out of those. But if we have a blueberry bowl, nobody wants that, right? Yeah, I know it. The blueberry is way healthier than the acai berry. It's like not even funny. It's like the blueberry is about as good a berry as you could possibly ingest in your body. It is just super fabulous for you, right? But we get bored with stuff like that. We get bored with the same old thing every day, and we need some new adventure. We need some new thing like that. And we went through all the whole day yesterday. Last night's show, if you guys didn't catch it, we went through all of the just conversations that I had from last night, and then again today with the conversations that I had. And I just thought to myself, Jason, you just should stay simple. You just should stay simple and just explain every night, whether it's you do it 365 nights a year, or however many times you got a radio show. if you just would stay simple and keep it, what do you want the people to know that listen to this program? Like, what do I want you to know? I just want you to know some fundamental things, and I want you to be able to understand how you can capture health. You can. The person right there that's looking at this show, the person that is listening to this show, wherever you might be, you can capture health. You can capture better health than you have for yourself. Like, this is a personal show. This is not what I do for a living. This is not what I plan on doing for a living. That I'm not trying to become the number one health guru guy on the planet, even though it'd probably be good for the planet if I did that. That I make a living as a wellness chiropractor at the Rock Health and Wellness Center right here in Lubbock. That's what my living is. That's what I do. I do this show for education purposes for all of the people that might be patients at my office, or all the people anywhere on the planet that just might want to know a little bit more about health. That's what we do the show for. So it got back into the fundamental things, and I just think we're going to talk about that again tonight. That's what I want to talk about. I just want to talk about. I've told you guys this before. I coached football for 6 years. College football was my life before chiropractic. My dad was a high school football coach when I was a little kid, before we moved out to New Mexico and we started training racehorses. I went to my first football game when I was 2 weeks old, I think. I was born in October. It's been part of my life. I've studied it. I'm pretty dang good at knowing about it. I played it at the highest level. I was pretty successful doing it, and I coached it for 6 years in college. 3 at New Mexico State, and coached wide receivers. In one of those years, we were number 4 in the country in passing. We had a 3,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard receiver, and a 1,000-yard rusher in that offense. We were pretty dang good on offense. We weren't very good on defense, and we didn't win very many games, but we were pretty dang good on offense. Number 4 in the country in passing. I think it was Florida State, the University of Nevada, Reno, and then New Mexico State that year. Cody Ledbetter was our quarterback. Lucius Davis was our wide receiver. Denvis Mans was our running back. It was pretty good. We had a whole group of wide receivers, but he was kind of our senior leader right there. And I coached the wide receivers that year. And then I coached 3 years at Texas Tech. And what I learned in those 3 years working with Coach John Goodner on defense at Texas Tech has set the foundation of my entire practice of chiropractic. The fundamental things, the fundamental things I learned from Coach Dykes. Coach Dykes was the same guy every day. Every single day for 7 years, he was the same guy. He didn't get high, he didn't get low, he didn't go up into these manic states or go down to this depressed state. He just came to work. He just had a solid personality. He was good to people, and every day he went to work. And Coach Goodner was basic and fundamental. Just line up as plain vanilla as you can. Get your kids lined up right and let them play. And we were number 8 in the country in total defense in 1998. 1998, we were 8 in the country in total defense. I know that's not relevant to y'all, except it's relevant to me and my understanding of health, because we didn't have to get exotic, and we studied people who were super successful. And I'd mentioned Tom Osborne on this show before. He was the head coach at Nebraska for 25 years, and I think he won 252 games in that 25 years, which means he averaged 10 wins a season for 25 years. That is hard to do now. I'm telling you, that's hard to do. If you average 10 wins a season, it means you're successful. And he was super simple. He was super simple in his schemes. He was super simple in his special team stuff. He was super simple in his offense. He was super simple in his defense. It was just get really good players and coach them really hard and keep it really simple so that they could succeed. And if I was going to say, hey, I want to be at least 10-1 Nowadays they play 12 games, whatever. But if I want to win 10 games this year with my health, what would be the smartest way for me to do it? If I was going to go back and study somebody that really understood health, would I go find the most exotic thing I could possibly find and then see what's the chances of me being as healthy as possible this year? Or if I was to look at football coaches and say, Coach Osborne coached for 25 years and averaged 10 wins a season for 25 years. If I want to take the next 25 years of my life, starting right now, however old you are, I'm 53. If I just wanted to say, okay, from now until the time I'm 78, I want to be a 10-win season health guy for the next 25 years. What would I do to accomplish that? What should I come up with some fancy scheme? Should I come up with some fancy punt team or some fancy kickoff return or some crazy scheme that I have to get so dang complicated to do? Or should I just get really simple? And I think, in my philosophy of it, I think we should just get really simple. I don't understand why it's so complicated. You know what blows my mind? It blows my mind for my patients, because I take Blue Cross insurance in my office, and some of my patients have $2,500 deductibles or $5,000 deductibles or $8,000 deductibles, and they meet their deductible. And some of my patients meet their deductible in the first 4 months of a year. A lot of them meet their deductible in the first half of a year. I have spent probably since March of 2000, I've been to the medical doctor 3 times since March of 2000 in the last 24 years. And I'm sure I didn't spend more than a couple $100. Let's say I spent $300 each visit. I don't think I've spent, and I know that's not right, but I don't think I've spent $1,000 in a doctor's office in the last 24 years. And when I think about that, I wonder to myself, I'm like, well, why is that the case? Like, how come I've got families that'll spend $4,000 on their deductible in the first 4 months of a year, and I haven't spent $1,000 in 24 years? What is it that is my health just that bad? Or am I neglecting myself? What is the deal, right? I don't think so. I don't think I'm genetically superior to anybody. I don't think that there's something some secret that I've got, some secret sauce that we mix up at the house that keeps us that way. I can't tell you if Leslie spent that much money in 24 years. Like, I can't even tell you the last time she went to the medical doctor. So us as a group, the last time Caitlin's been to the medical doctor at her 1 year well check, and then she went one time. Jacob's been the same exact way. So our family of 4 does it different, and our family of 4 we haven't always done things right, but we've done fundamental things for a long time. And if you're out there, and one of the things that really hit me today was because I had a new patient. I had a conversation. I had a couple of conversations, but I had a conversation about, and it's what has become with health is that the first thing that we do, we have a symptom, and then we think something's wrong with us, and we go to the doctor, and the doctor gives us a medication. Like, I'm taking that for this, and I'm taking that for this, and I'm taking that for this. But we don't understand that it's just the symptom is our body trying to tell us that we're in an environment that's incongruent with health. So, and then we get worried about things. We get worried about things that aren't real. We get worried about things that we've got degeneration in our spine, but we're afraid to get adjusted because we had heard something. And it's really true. It's like we get information that's false information, or it's contradictory to health, and then we don't really understand. We just get lost in it. We don't understand what we're doing. So, what do you? That's the stuff I really want to talk about. I want to talk about the same thing that we talked about 40,000 times already on this show. I want to talk about it till you get it. I want, and if you guys, the few of you that listen to this show, y'all probably already get it, and you want me to talk about something else, and then I just get lost in talking about stuff, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. There's fundamental things, and they all tie together, and I'll show you an example of that right now. There's um, I was yeah I was I was reading this article. It's in the Journal of Nutrients, Volume 16, Issue 3, Nutrients 2024, and this is from the school. This is an Australian article. School of Health, University of Sunshine Coast, Sippy Downs, Australia. Clinical and Health Sciences and Alliance for Research in Exercise, Nutrition, and Activity. And I got it pulled up over here because I wanted to look at it right there. But yeah, it's the title of the article. It says, and this is what I want to show you. This is what I want to show you about how it fits together. I want to show you this. So the title of the article says, adherence to a Mediterranean diet is inversely associated with anxiety and stress, but not depression. A cross-sectional analysis, community dwelling older Australians. So what they did is they did a study with older Australians, and they put them on a Mediterranean diet, some of them on, some of them off, whatever. And they gave them some questionnaires to find out, is there any association between being on a Mediterranean diet and decreasing your anxiety and your stress? So diet quality may be an important modifiable risk factor for mental health disorders. However, these findings have been inconsistent, particularly in older adults. We explored the independent association between adherence to a Mediterranean diet and severity of symptoms related to depression, anxiety, and stress in older adults in Australia. This was a cross-sectional analysis of older Australians older than 60 years old. Mediterranean diet adherence was assessed using the Mediterranean Diet Adherence Screener, and the Depression, Anxiety, and Stress Scale was used to assess the severity of negative emotional symptoms. A total of 294 participants were included in the final analysis. And so there are 294 people that was in this study. Adherence to a Mediterranean diet was inversely associated with severity of anxiety symptoms. The more you adhered yourself to a Mediterranean diet, the less anxiety you had. And the same thing was with stress. Mediterranean diet adherence was inversely associated with symptoms of stress. However, no relationship between that and depressive symptoms was observed. We showed that adherence to a Mediterranean diet is inversely associated with the severity of symptoms related to anxiety and stress, but not depression. Okay, so that's one thing that they learned, right? Exploring these findings with the use of longitudinal analysis and robust clinical trials are needed to better elucidate these findings in older adults. Okay, they took a group of people, they put them on a Mediterranean diet, and they found out that their anxiety decreased. So you gotta, if I know you guys wouldn't necessarily do it, but I would want to do it. I would want to know, I would want to map that out. I wouldn't want to just take it, me personally, because this is what I do for a living, so I can come on the show and tell it to you, so you can go do the things that you do for a living and keep the electricity on in the building, or run the grocery stores or the banks or whatever, school teachers, or all the stuff that you guys do, right? So why would that be the case? Why is it that what I eat might actually decrease my anxiety or my stress level? Okay, well, So let's just talk about the levels. Let's talk about the different things that could go on with that, right? Let's talk about if what I eat can decrease my stress levels. I wonder if what I eat can increase my stress levels. I wonder if it can also increase my anxiety. Would those two things be related? And if they were related, how could that possibly be the case? How could it be the case that whatever I eat increases my anxiety? Because I eat it, it goes in my mouth. So maybe there's some sort of, how do I get anxiety? Do I get anxiety from my tongue? Do I get anxiety from my throat? Do I get anxiety from my stomach? Do I get anxiety from my intestines? Where does that food that I eat have some sort of way? Where is anxiety? What is anxiety in the first place? Like, where does it come from? And how do we generate it? Do we generate it in our knee? No, everybody, come on. You're like, come on, Dr. Clemmons, stop it. Yeah, we don't generate. Anxiety is a brain issue. Anxiety is in our brain. It's part of our our responses to our environment is what it is. It's happening. And what we know from the master and his emissary and Dr. McGilchrist's work and others, Dr. Peterson's work and all that, that new book I'm breaking down, Archaeology of Mind, Jaak Panksepp, is he'll break it down for you. He'll explain a lot of this stuff to you. It happens in the brain and it happens in the right hemisphere. The right hemisphere is where we deal with anxiety. We deal with the unknown. We deal with the things that are unknown. It happens in the right hemisphere. So the question is, how does my tongue connect to my right hemisphere? What is happening? How does that possibly work? And why would it be less anxious to eat a Mediterranean diet? And let me just call that up for us right quick, because I want to make sure that everybody knows what that means. I'll see what the gurus say. What is the definition of the Mediterranean diet? It's a way of eating based on the traditional cuisine of countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea. These include Italy, Greece, Spain, and Israel. The diet typically consists of the region's traditional fruits and vegetables, beans, nuts, seafood, olive oil, and dairy, and perhaps with a glass or two of red wine, maybe. Yep. The Mediterranean diet is more than just eating delicious, wholesome foods, though. So that we're talking about fruits and vegetables, nuts, beans, seafood, olive oil. Well, that's basically the main thing. That just comes right off. I just searched the first thing right there, Mediterranean meal plan or whatever, mediterraneanplan.com. What is the Mediterranean diet? Foundation of the Mediterranean diet is plant foods. Meals are built around vegetables, fruits, herbs, nuts, beans, and whole grains. Moderate amounts of dairy, poultry, and eggs are part of the Mediterranean diet. Okay, well, we can take that, and basically what we can say from that is that it's not processed foods. It's not processed foods. We talked about processed foods last night, right? Those foods, the things that they're talking about right there, vegetables and fruits. The vegetable grows in the field. The farmer takes the vegetable out of the field, takes it to the market or the grocery store. We go to the market or the grocery store, we buy the vegetable. There's nothing processed about that vegetable. Now, if we want to buy the Pop-Tarts, then there's something that grows in a field and it goes into a factory. I hope there's something that's natural in a Pop-Tart, but it's going to go to a factory, and now we're going to process it up into all kinds of different things, and we're going to strip out all the nutrients, and then we're going to put nutrients back in it, and we're going to put some sugar in it. We're going to put artificial colors in there, and we're going to make it into a shape, and then now we're going to sell a Pop-Tart. We're going to take that to the grocery store, and now that's what we're going to end up with, a processed food, right? So it's just food. When you eat whole, unprocessed food, you get a better response with your nervous system. You get a better right hemisphere brain state whenever you're eating the proper foods. And it ties in together. That's how it ties together. It's like, look, there's a reason for that. There's a reason that when we eat those whole foods, we function at a less stressed level. And what does the stress mean? What does it mean to be less stressed? Well, it's the same exact thing. It's the same right hemisphere. I walked in on Amelia just a second ago. She was turning off my computers in my first room. She's a college student that works for us here at The Rock. And I walked into the room and surprised her. And she jumped and she was like, oh. And then she's like, you scared me. Like it was quick. And I was like, yeah, that was your right amygdala firing. It was your thalamus to your right amygdala that was firing before your cortex could get the information, and then your cortex turned off your amygdala. And she was like, oh, very good. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. And with us is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. So I'll draw it up for you guys that are, because you've seen it before. But while we're on this break, I'll draw it up for you right quick. Remember, the body keeps the score. This is where I got it. This is where it breaks down. Right side, left side, top and bottom of brain. Information into the thalamus. Thalamus sends the information down to the amygdala. Thalamus sends the information up to the cortex. It takes longer to get to the cortex than it does to the amygdala, so the stress response is started. The stress response is started, but then the information got to the cortex. The cortex says, that's Dr. Clemmons, no problem. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to come down. We're going to shut off the stress response from the cortex. Then we're going to kick the information over to the known world. That's the startled response right there. That's how it works. And that's what happened to her. And I mapped it out for her really quickly. There's your stress response, right? Stress response. Mediterranean diet decreases stress response. Decreases your stress. What does that mean? It's got to have some sort of relationship with your amygdala. You got to have, if you're going to kick that stress response off, you got to have that lower right brain firing at some point. So, which is going to fire immediately. When I walked into the room and I surprised her right there, what she got a very quick firing that came down to the adrenal gland. Let me get us back on the radio. Hang on. Okay, everybody, we're back. I was drawing out that response right there. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, and I was drawing out that response that we just had when I said I scared Amelia in there, and so I said I scared her when I walked in the room, and then I broke it down for her what happened, right? So I broke down for that's what you get when you work at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. You get that experience broken down for you. I walked in, it startled her. She didn't have time to recognize who I was. She wasn't expecting me to be there. The right hemisphere is trying to look for things that aren't what you expect. So the right hemisphere is like, ooh, okay, I didn't expect him to walk in. So her eyeballs saw me. It hit the thalamus. The thalamus sent the information to the amygdala. The amygdala kicked off the stress response. The amygdala fired. down through the spinal cord to the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland immediately released cortisol. Cortisol is going to increase our blood sugar. Cortisol is going to inhibit our cerebellum, which is our balance, coordination, and posture part of our brain. It's going to turn that off, and that whole pathway happened. And in 1 microsecond, that whole pathway happened. She jumped and was startled, and then the information got to the cortex, the upper part of the brain, and when it got to the upper part of the brain, then her upper part of the brain recognized, that's Dr. Clemmons. That's not a tiger. That's not an alligator. That's not any need to be stressed out about that. So the upper brain sent the signal down to the lower brain and turned off the amygdala, and then moved that information over and said, hey, that's Dr. Clemmons. And then she's like, of course I know that's Dr. Clemmons. And that's our stress response. So, okay, we know that, right? You guys know that. So if that's our stress response, and I can read an article that tells me, whoa, I don't know what I just did right there. Hang on. Hang on a second. I got my... It's so cool when you got so much technology going on at the same time. You don't even know what you're doing half the time. I lost my grease board right there. It disappeared on me somewhere. Let me see if I can get it back. There it is. Sorry. Okay, stick with me. It's fun. It's crazy, but it's fun. Come on. All right. If that's what happens in the stress response, and I can read an article that says, in the title, adherence to a Mediterranean diet is inversely associated with anxiety and stress. The more I adhere to the diet, the less stress that I have. What does that mean? The more I eat whole foods, the less my right lower hemisphere fires to my adrenal glands, and the less it fires cortisol. And what is cortisol going to do? Everybody in the planet ought to know this by now. If you don't know this, learn it right now. Because what does cortisol do? What is the main thing cortisol does? It increases blood sugar. That's what it does. The stress response increases blood sugar. When I eat whole foods, Mediterranean style foods, vegetables, fruits, nuts, berries, when I eat seafood, when I eat whole meats, when I eat grass-fed animals, right? I don't fire my adrenal glands all day long, and I don't increase my blood sugar all day long. That's one of the things that I don't do, is I don't increase my blood sugar. So let's reverse the idea. What happens if eating a whole food diet decreases my stress response? Then it decreases my stress response compared to what? Well, it decreases my stress response compared to not eating a whole food diet. So what would a not eating a whole food diet mean? It would mean eating a processed food diet. What are you having for supper tonight? What is on your plate right now? What are you going to eat tonight? What did you already eat tonight? If you already ate, 6:37, probably a lot of you guys already ate. What did you eat for supper? Did you eat whole foods? Did you eat fruits and vegetables, nuts, beans? Did you eat things that were healthy for you, or did you eat a processed food diet tonight? And if you ate a processed food diet, what did that do to your brain? Well, it fired your stress response. That's what it did to your brain. It fired your stress response. It fired your adrenal glands. How many people, these buzzwords, and that's what I was kind of trying to talk about at the beginning of the show. People want to talk about adrenal fatigue. People want to talk about, doc, I think I got adrenal fatigue, and I think I need some adrenal support. Okay, that's like an exotic berry. That's like some sort of sexy acai or something, right? It's the downstream effect of the environment that the body's in that's incongruent with health. It's not the foundation of health. It's not being healthy, but it's not really being healthy because you're taking adrenal support. And I've got adrenal support. I might even have it right here. Here's Sleep Assist. Here's our new thing that we got that from our own brand of stuff that we got right here, right? The Rock Health and Wellness Center Sleep Assist. Yeah. Why do I need that? What the same thing? Well, I'm being healthy because I'm taking adrenal support. No, you're not. You've missed health. You missed it back. That left turn at Albuquerque you were supposed to take, right? That's where we missed the boat because why would that adrenal gland be firing all the time in the first place? Let's address that. Let's address that. What it happens to us whenever we're not fundamentally sound in the physical, chemical, and mental emotional aspects of our health. And I know it sounds crazy. I know maybe, at least I think it sounds crazy to myself because it's so strange because no one else talks about it. And it's one of those deals that it's like, well, who cares, Jason? Like, who cares? What difference does it make? Like I don't know. Like, it doesn't make any difference to my mother-in-law who turned 80 on Tuesday. It doesn't make any difference to her, but it might have made a difference to my brother-in-law who I had to say goodbye to on Tuesday with the brain tumor. How come he got a brain tumor? What is the mechanism of that? I'd really like to know what the mechanism of that is. Obviously, my mother-in-law is rocking along. She's going to have her bread and her cake and do her thing. I don't know. How did that work? It doesn't matter if it doesn't affect us, but if it does affect us, it might really destroy our life, or we might think we're old at 80 when we're supposed to be 120. Maybe that's another thing. Maybe we can't get out of our house, so we can't do anything because we're broken down like my dad was. Because because it does make a difference, right? So there is a tie-in from that whole thing. I want to read you a little piece of this chapter 2, and I probably have read it before, but it ties perfectly into what we were talking about last night. From the Master and His Emissary, this is page 58. It's emotional asymmetry. The affinity of the right hemisphere with emotions and the bodily experience of them is reflected in a range of functional asymmetries. Part of the right frontal lobe of the brain, the so-called orbitofrontal cortex of the right hemisphere, is essential to emotional understanding and regulation. What did we talk about last night with the Smithsonian article? The Smithsonian article that we referenced last night talked about chronic pain has an increase of low frequency waves in the orbitofrontal region of our brain. And the orbitofrontal region of our brain is essential to emotional understanding and regulation. So emotions are pain. Pain is not simply physical. Pain is physical, chemical, and mental emotional. It's not just simply I smashed my hand with a hammer. It's I smashed my hand with a hammer and my hand was already inflamed because I ate too many corn chips last night. And I'm really stressed out and emotional right now. And now let me rate the pain of how bad smashing my hand with a hammer was. It's totally different than if I smash my hand with a hammer, but my 6-3 ratio is less than 3-1, and I don't have any inflammation in my body, and I'm not stressed out at all, and things are going well inside my brain, and I do a lot of walking, and I do a lot of exercise, and my brain is very balanced, but I smash my hand with a hammer, it's like, that hurt. It's not the same response, right? The part of the frontal lobe of the brain, the so-called orbitofrontal cortex of the right hemisphere, is essential to emotional understanding and regulation. It is also where the emotional significance of events is consciously appreciated. the emotional significance. How emotional was that? That's why when you play football, you can get hit really hard and you don't cry. But if I get hit really hard now, I might cry. I might cry because I got a whole different definition of how I consciously appreciate that, right? The right hemisphere is in general more intimately connected with the limbic system, that emotional lower brain, an ancient subcortical system that has evolved in the experience of emotions of all kinds and with other subcortical structures than is the left hemisphere. The right frontal pole also regulates the hypothalamic pituitary axis, the HPA axis, which overstimulation of the HPA axis leads to anxiety, depression, concentration issues, ADHD, trouble sleeping, high cholesterol, obesity, weight gaining, all that type of stuff, right? We know that. It's the right frontal pole also regulates the hypothalamic pituitary axis, which is the neuroendocrine interface between the body and emotion. And it is essential to our subjective appreciation of the body's physiological condition. It is intimately connected with the unconscious and autonomic nervous system for regulating the body and its level of arousal. For example, through the autonomic control of heart rate or neuroendocrine function. Your right hemisphere is really tied into your heart rate. Your heart rate is trying to control your carbon dioxide oxygen ratios. So whether or not you can breathe or not, and does carbon dioxide um, increase cancers when we have more carbon dioxide and oxygen? What is oxygen? What's oxygen relationship to cancer? And does cancer grow in an oxygenated tissue? Those things matter, right? As a consequence, it is also the right frontotemporal cortex that exerts inhibitory control over emotional arousal. I can inhibit my emotional arousal in that area. Although there has been much debate about the particular emotional timbre of each hemisphere, of which more shortly, there is evidence that in all forms of emotional perception, regardless of the type of emotion, and in most forms of expression, the right hemisphere is dominant. So the right hemisphere is dominant in our emotional response. And the frequency waves that are traveling through our right hemisphere, if they're out of balance, will cause us to perceive our environment in a more emotional response. And that will also increase our anxiety and our stress. So maybe what this article is saying is that a Mediterranean diet changes the frequency, changes the amount of low frequency brain waves to the point where it decreases our stress levels and calms us down. It's either our low frequency or our high frequency, right? It might actually change the frequency, the amount of different frequencies of brain waves, which changes the way that we perceive our environment because of that right side. It's all the same thing. It all comes back and maps itself together into the same fundamental things of health. So a Mediterranean diet, and I would be willing to bet if these same people did the same thing with a paleo diet, or they did the same thing as just a normal meat and vegetables, nuts and berries, to do the CrossFit diet. Meat and vegetables, nuts and berries, no fruit, a little bit of sugar. No, a little bit of fruit, no sugar, right? I would be willing to bet you if they did that the same way, that they would end up with the same results. They would end up with the same results. And I don't know, he just sent that fireworks deal, but that was cool right there. Thanks. Um, um, we would get the same results by eating whole foods. So what is the fundamental thing that I really want you to know about tonight? I want to make sure that I just don't point out the negative, because sometimes I do that. That's my coaching part of me, or my brain damage. I don't know which one, but my brain is actually really exceptional, by the way, because I got it scanned. Um, it's not very smart, but it's within normal limits. So, but I lost my train of thought right there, because I saw the big flash of that's attention deficit disorder. That's a left hemisphere issue right there, right? Uh, no, the eat whole foods. What do I mean by whole foods? Eat meat that's grass fed, or fish that's wild caught. Eat meat that's grass fed or fish that's wild caught. I think you're safe. I think you're safe right there. Red meat gets a bad rap. I don't buy it. I don't buy the bad rap on the red meat. I think it's the biscuit that's the cause of the bad rap for the red meat. All my meat and potatoes guys that's been getting this bad rap on red meat, they're meat and potato. They're white potatoes with cream gravy on top of them. Give me a biscuit with some jelly on top of it. Those are processed foods. You don't have a biscuit field out there somewhere. You can't go out there in the middle of a field somewhere and get you some biscuits. They don't. That's not a whole food. That's a processed food. You cannot. There's not a field. The amber waves of grain, the purple waves of grape jelly. No, there's no such thing as grape jelly in the middle of a field. That's a processed food, and it's going to have a lot of sugar in it. And when we increase all that sugar, we're going to change the way that we handle our food. So what we want whole foods. We want to get those as grass-fed as we can, so we decrease our inflammation. We decrease our omega-6s. That's what we're looking for. JT's listening to me tonight. He got another text right here. Biscuit field. Yeah, that's right. There's not any biscuit fields out there. You can't go out there and just find a biscuit field. You got to process that food, and you got to process that field and in a factory in order to get it into the grocery store to go buy some biscuits. And my meat and potatoes guys always have some biscuits or cornbread or something that goes along with that. That grew up in that. My granddaddy was that way. My daddy was that way. That's the house we grew up in. That's the way. That's the cultural downfall of the human race. And I love those people. They're good people. Don't get me wrong. I love my granddaddy and I love my daddy. They're good people. But we didn't maximize what we could. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to maximize what we can. So we want to eat meat that's wild, grass-fed animals. Eat your grass-fed animals. If you're not eating grass-fed animals, you have to balance that with your fish oil, because you got to get your 6:3 ratio right. Okay? You want to eat vegetables. And there's all of a sudden, now that we have Instagram, all of a sudden vegetables have become the devil. They're like poison, like that. And it's like, okay, look, what you're going to have to do now is, you guys that are spewing all that stuff that vegetables are poison because they're plants and you're not supposed to eat plants and all that sort of thing. What you're going to have to do is, you're going to have to get a whole group of people and get them to live out to be 120 years old and prove to all of us that the last 10,000 years of human existence, or however long you want to say that there's been humans on the planet, is wrong, because people along this way, we've been killing ourselves with vegetables. You're going to have to prove that. Until you do that, I'm not buying that deal at all. I don't think you have enough evidence, and the longest living people on the planet eat vegetables. They always have. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with eating vegetables. You just got to watch your sugar intake, of how much sugar you're going to get with them. But if you're eating vegetables that come from the field, that's what you need to do, right? Eat your vegetables. Eat your berries instead of your fruits. Eat your berries instead of your fruits. Your fruits are sparingly. Have a fruit sparingly if you have the option, stay with your berries. You're going to keep your sugar level down right there. That's your meals. Eat your nuts from a tree. Eat beans that are your beans. Dr. Guthrie says you should pressure cook those beans to cook the lectins out of them. Look him up if you're interested in that about the bean thing. That's what we've got a pressure cooker at the house, Instapot. Leslie started making some beans. They're absolutely delicious. And we're gonna have what we have for supper. I think she said we're having queso burgers, or we're having we we made up our own we made up our own dish, and it's actually gonna laugh at me for saying this out loud, but we call it a sweeto pie because we were talking about Frito pie, and with one of my patients because her kids are in athletics and they play little league ball somewhere, and they go out and so they eat the Frito pies at the baseball parks, and so we the other night she made those beans, which are delicious, and she made some taco meat, and then um, some sweet potato fries in the air cooker, the air fryer. And so sometimes the air fryer cooks those a little bit much, and so they get a little hard. So I put them in the bottom of the bowl, then I put those beans on top of them, and the meat on top of that. And so I said, this is kind of like a Frito pie, but except it's not. It's a sweeto pie. So I know that's a little silly, but that's I don't know if she's making the beans tonight, but that's on the list. It's going to be sweet potato fries and grass-fed meat, and that's going to be supper. And today at lunch, we went and got Chipotle, and I got chicken and beans. Now, that's not free-range chicken, I don't think. I don't know what Chipotle sells, and there's all kinds of people that talk trash about Chipotle's oils and all that stuff. That's what I had, chicken and beans. And this morning for breakfast, I had a smoothie. And I've had a handful of pistachios today, and an RX bar, which is dates and almonds, and it's got a few cashews in there. It's not the greatest, but it's just whole foods. And one of my ladies said to me that today, because I went on Tuesday to my mother-in-law's my 84-year-old lady. She said something about surely you eat sugar every once in a while, and I said, well, I did for my whole first 50-something years, but not anymore. Not in 2 years and 2 months. Right? There's not going to be anything on that menu that's going to be full of sugar, and there's going to be almost nothing that's processed. And it's been that way now for 2 years. And I'm telling you, it's great life. It's a great living. Add your exercise to that. Get your walking in. Remember last night we talked about walking. Get your walking in and get your weight-bearing exercises in. My guy that worked out this morning in our CrossFit class, he's like, I can't believe that little old workout that you put together was actually as tough as it was. And I was like, yeah, because they figured out the science, the CrossFitters figured out the science of exercising health, and it's just great. It's absolutely great. Quick, 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off, five rounds, did it 4 times. Just picked out an exercise, fill in your exercise right there, and you get your exercise. Now your exercise decreases your stress. Your exercise puts your right hemisphere in a nice state of mind. Your diet decreases your stress and puts your right hemisphere in a nice state of mind. Now your adrenal glands aren't firing all day long, and you don't have this increased blood glucose, blood sugar, and you don't get adrenal fatigue, and you can control your HPA axis, and now you can keep yourself less stressed. Yes, we're going to talk more about this tomorrow night. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for listening to the show. We will be back tomorrow night live. Hope you guys have a great night.